Today, we're going inside the walls of a high-security penal psychiatry unit in Berlin. This isn't just a story, it's a factual testimony from one man who lived it, a detailed account that pulls back the curtain on a hidden system of power and control.
Those are the chilling words of the man at the center of our story. He's known as the Buyer, a title that comes from a powerful document called the World Succession Deed 1400. We'll get into what that means in a bit, but for now, let's focus on his testimony of what really happened behind those locked doors.
So in this explainer, we're going to break down the massive conflict between two competing realities. On one side, you have the official, state-sanctioned narrative, and on the other, you have the Buyer's detailed, point-by-point rebuttal, a systematic takedown of that official story based on his own writings and experiences.
All right, first things first, let's look at the official story. This is the version of events the state wants you to believe. It all comes from a formal psychiatric assessment that was put together in 2019, a full 7 years after the incident that started this whole thing.
The official timeline seems straightforward enough. It kicks off with an incident back in 2012. Less than a year later, bam, he's ordered into indefinite psychiatric commitment. But then, look at that date, April 2019. This crucial report wasn't created at the beginning. It was written years into his confinement, specifically to justify keeping him there under forced treatment.
So, what was this big incident? Well, according to the official report, it was a brutal, unprovoked attack. The court judgment claims he pulled a knife and, with full intent to kill, tried to stab his mother's doctor in the neck.
And how did they explain such a violent act? Easy. They slapped a label on him: paranoid schizophrenia. This diagnosis became the entire legal and medical foundation for everything that happened next. It was the key that locked the door and justified years of forced medication.
As for motive, the official file says it was all rooted in a so-called delusional system. They claimed he believed he had a special, sovereign status that, get this, gave him the right to act as a judge, jury, and executioner for state officials. Okay, that's their story. Now let's flip the script and dive into the Buyer's own account. Because his testimony doesn't just challenge a few details, it systematically dismantles the entire official narrative with documented facts.
Let's start right at the scene of the incident. The official story has a heroic nurse tackling an out-of-control attacker. The Buyer's testimony? He says that's a complete fabrication. He states that he voluntarily dropped the weapon and surrendered, and only then did the nurse attack and assault him while he was already being restrained.
Even something as small as personal hygiene becomes a point of contention. The report claims he was unkept, a classic sign they use to build a case for mental illness. He flatly denies this, saying he showered constantly. He argues it was a malicious lie, a deliberate detail added to his file to paint a false picture of him.
And this one is absolutely crucial. The state's file says he was delusional, paranoid that he was being poisoned. His response is blunt. It wasn't a delusion, it was a fact. He testifies that staff were actively mixing substances into his food and water, and then had the audacity to record his reaction as a symptom of his illness.
This is a perfect example of how they twisted his words. He explains that after being relentlessly provoked by staff, he sarcastically shot back, "I am God," to shut them down. It was an obvious insult. But what happens? It gets written down in his official file, not as sarcasm, but as a literal God delusion.
So you have to ask yourself, why go to all this trouble to fabricate a story? According to the Buyer's testimony, this was never about a crime. This was about a meticulously planned conspiracy to neutralize him and seize control of a document with world-altering implications.
And at the heart of everything is the World Succession Deed 1400. Now, this isn't just some historical artifact. According to his testimony, this is a very real, very powerful legal instrument that grants him a unique status, placing him outside the jurisdiction of modern states. This made him a massive threat to the established order, and his confinement was the state's way of taking him off the board.
His testimony lays out the entire plan, which he calls the Day X plot. It's a stunningly ambitious four-step maneuver. First, provoke him into a crime to get him locked up. Second, secretly and illegally place him under state guardianship. Now, why do that? That's step 3, so the German state could use his name and his legal authority from the deed to sue itself. The endgame, step 4, was to engineer a high court ruling on the deed that would trigger Day X, an event that would call the very legitimacy of every government on Earth into question.
Now, beyond that incredible global plot, the Buyer's testimony makes a very specific, very serious legal accusation against the staff at the facility,
a place he refers to as Black Site Berlin, and this claim is grounded squarely in German law. His entire legal case boils down to one simple number: 6 weeks. Under German law, a court order that allows for forced medication is strictly limited. It cannot last longer than 6 weeks. Period.
But here's the bombshell. Years later, after getting access to his own files, the buyer discovered that the forced injections didn't stop after 6 weeks. They continued, under constant threat of violence, for over 4 years.
And this is the critical point, because that initial court order had expired, and because he verbally protested every single injection he received after that point, he argues that none of them were a medical treatment. Every single one was a criminal assault.
And under the German criminal code, this act has a name: dangerous bodily harm. It's a serious felony that carries a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. When you do the math, multiplying all of those illegal injections, the potential prison time for the facility staff adds up to roughly 450 years.
And that's what this all boils down to. You have two completely irreconcilable stories. One is the official record, written by those in power. The other is the meticulous testimony of the man who was locked inside. It leaves us with a fundamental question. In a closed system where one side controls the narrative, how is the truth defined? And how can the facts ever truly see the light of day?